Lance Stroll has refused to confirm his future in Formula One. The Aston Martin driver, son of team owner Lawrence Stroll, responded to the most direct question about his continuation with the team for 2027, with a phrase that chilled everyone present in the press room. He said he's only thinking about this weekend. Nothing else. No confirmation, no commitment, no guarantee. For any other driver on the grid, this answer would be normal. But for the son of the team owner, refusing to give a simple yes to the question of whether he will drive for Aston Martin next year is a signal that something enormous is changing within the Silverstone squad. And what is emerging behind the scenes is far more serious than anyone in the paddock expected. When the journalist reminded him that in the past he had said he didn't want to leave Formula One and asked him directly if this meant he would stay at Aston Martin in 2027, Stroll responded with calculated vagueness, saying that at the moment that is the plan and that he will proceed day by day, weekend by weekend. An answer that confirms nothing and leaves every door open. Aston Martin is experiencing the most disastrous season since its rebirth in Formula One. In 11 races, the team has secured just 1 point. A single point, earned by Fernando Alonso in Monaco thanks to retirements and penalties for other drivers. The team that invested hundreds of millions in a futuristic new factory in Silverstone, that hired Adrian Newey as technical director, and that had promised to fight for the championship within a few years, finds itself last in the Constructors' Championship with a car that, at its debut, proved to be a complete disaster. The gap to the top teams was so wide in the early races that Aston Martin's drivers struggled, even to compete with the teams at the back of the grid. A failure that has called into question the entire project and the credibility of an operation that, on paper, had all the resources necessary to be competitive. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment if you think Lance Stroll is really about to leave Aston Martin, or if you believe his silence hides a completely different strategy from what everyone imagines. Because the truth behind this situation is more complex than it seems. Honda's chief engineer, Shintaro Orihara, revealed the exact moment the team realized something had gone terribly wrong. At the end of 2025, the situation didn't seem so negative. Performance and drivability were still under development, but everything was moving in the right direction. Then, January 2026 arrived, and everything changed. The engineers realized that in some areas it wasn't about specific problems, but about a constant decay in performance. Competitiveness and reliability would not be at the level needed to compete. But the worst was yet to come. At the Barcelona tests, reality was brutal. Performance was clearly inferior to that of all other competitors, and battery problems emerged that further delayed the development of a car already massively behind schedule. Orihara publicly admitted that they didn't expect a situation this serious. He said they knew they weren't competitive, but they didn't imagine the gap would be this wide. For Honda, which had dominated with Red Bull for 4 of the 5 years under the previous regulations, this represents a technical failure of historic proportions. The transition to the new regulations posed technical and organizational challenges that the Sakura factory was not adequately prepared to face. MGU-K power went from 120 to 350 kilowatts. The MGU-H disappeared completely, affecting drivability, and the fuel flow was radically modified. Orihara admitted that the main challenge for Honda was combining so many changes simultaneously in a single development cycle. The complexity of the new regulations exceeded the adaptation capacity of one of the most experienced engine manufacturers in Formula One history, a failure that weighs even more heavily considering that Honda had won 4 consecutive world titles with Red Bull under the previous regulations. Like this video, because the next part covers the biggest upgrade package in Aston Martin's history and its real impact on the car's performance. The only light at the end of the tunnel for Aston Martin came in Hungary. The team introduced a massive upgrade package at the Hungaroring, made up of 16 completely new components, which radically transformed the car. A lighter, re-homologated chassis and gearbox casing were introduced along with an almost total aerodynamic overhaul. New nose, new front wing, new floor, new diffuser, new side pods, new engine cover, and new rear wing assembly. Practically a completely different car compared to the one that had raced in the season's first 11 races. Never in recent Formula One history had a team introduced such a vast upgrade package in a single race weekend. The scale of the overhaul shows just how deep the problem with the original design was, and how many resources Aston Martin had to invest to correct mistakes that should never have happened in the first place. Independent performance analyses estimated that this package was worth between 1.4 and 1.8 seconds per lap in qualifying trim. A colossal improvement that Stroll himself described as the most encouraging development package in the team's history. The Canadian said Aston Martin is not yet in the front part of the midfield, but that it is finally in the fight. He added that the team knows it still needs to find more power and keep improving performance with more downforce and more horsepower from the engine. But despite the enthusiasm for the Hungarian package, the fact remains that Stroll and Alonso failed to break into the points even with 16 new components on the car. Progress was made, but the gap to those fighting for positions that matter remains enormous. Comment below if you think the Hungarian upgrade package is enough to save Aston Martin's season, or if you believe the gap to the top teams is now too big to close in 2026. The results in Hungary were not spectacular in terms of classification, with Stroll and Alonso finishing 13th and 14th respectively. But the real progress was evident in the data and in the car's on-track behavior. Aston Martin was no longer fighting to avoid finishing last. It was competing with rivals who, until just a few days earlier, had been unreachable. For a team that had gathered just 1 point in 11 races, this change represents an enormous transformation that has restored hope to the entire Silverstone team. The team's morale, which had plummeted to record lows after a catastrophic first half of the season, received a boost of confidence that could prove crucial for facing the second part of the season with the right mindset. Honda confirmed that an engine upgrade will arrive at Zandvoort thanks to the FIA's EDUO system, while further aerodynamic developments are expected at Monza and Baku. The road to competitiveness is still long, and Honda confirmed that a significant engine upgrade will not arrive in the short term. The development process requires months of testing before any new component can be installed on the car, and a precise timeline does not yet exist. For a team already suffering a performance deficit on the chassis, the absence of an imminent engine improvement further complicates the situation. But at least now there is a clear direction thanks to the Hungarian aerodynamic package. The Hungarian package demonstrated that when Aston Martin concentrates all its resources on a single objective, it is capable of producing impressive results. But the question that no one can ignore remains the one posed to Stroll in the Monaco press room. Will the team owner's son drive for Aston Martin in 2027 or not? His day-by-day, weekend-by-weekend answer leaves every possibility open. For a driver in his position, not saying yes means much more than a simple, "I don't know." It means something is changing in the team's internal dynamics, and that Stroll's seat, which until yesterday seemed guaranteed by family ties, might no longer be so secure. Aston Martin has invested too much to settle for mediocre results. And the second half of the season will tell whether Stroll is still the right man for this project, or whether his time on his father's team is coming to an end. The Stroll name may remain on Aston Martin's livery as owner, but the driver's surname could be very different in the 2027 season. And this possibility, unthinkable just a few months ago, has today become a concrete reality that the entire paddock is watching closely. See you in the next video.